Hello Crafty Monkeys. So today we're all going to be making a pincushion and our theme is triangle. So I've designed a little pincushion for you, and it is little, using half square triangles, which are really cute. How sweet is that? And I have filled mine with sand, so it's really beautiful to hold. It's got very satisfying weight to it. It's 4 by 2 inches finished, so you know they're fiddly, nice and fiddly, and it's designed so it fits just in that little groove under the throat of your sewing machine, just where you might need a pin or two. So what we're going to learn is we're going to improve our half square triangle piecing, because the smallest finish, 1 inch finish, will really test your accuracy. Our pinning, our pressing, our stitching together, adding a backing and hand finishing the opening, and also how to make a little bag insert. So really good practice for your triangles and a nice little project to have by your sewing machine. Gather together the things you're going to need to make your pincushion. You're going to need 4 fabrics. For the half square triangles, you really want something with a lot of contrast in. So I've got this lovely blue and a lovely sharp green, and then these 2 paler, which pick up the accents of the colours. You're going to need some scrap calico or other cotton fabric to use as the bag that you're going to put your filling in for your pincushion. Basic sewing supplies, scissors, rotary cutter, nice sharp pencil, your rulers, and some kind of pincushion stuffing. Now you can use this toy stuffing, you could use walnut shells, people use wire wool. I actually like some sand as well, keeps your pins nice and sharp and stops them going rusty. So assemble everything that you need, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay. We're going to need to layer up your fabric now, ready to cut it. We're going to cut 2 2-inch squares from each of these 4 fabrics. Now, depending on how confident you are with your cutting, you can do them all at the same time. You could do them in pairs, or you could do them 1 fabric at a time. It's entirely up to you. But you're going to layer them up as neatly as you can, and then we're going to use the markings on our mat and our ruler. Get them neat. You can see it does take a little bit of fiddling around, but nothing's difficult. You just take your time. And if you make a mistake, you just cut them again. Keep all your scraps. Don't worry about anything. Okay, we're making all of our half square triangles bigger than we need, so we're going to trim them down to be accurate. So don't worry. Just don't worry. Right, 2 inches. So I'm using my ruler and my cutting mat, line up all the edges. You can see it's not quite straight there at the bottom. Again, as I say, just do as well as you can. Nice sharp, nice grip on the ruler, always away from you. You're better off making multiple cuts than putting too much pressure on the rotary cutter. And try not to move anything until you know that you're through. Secure your blade, move away. There we go. So we don't need those anymore. Now if I could walk around the table without moving these, that's what I would do, but I can't at the moment, so I'm going to have to move my strips. The more you move them, the more likely you are to sort of knock them out of alignment. So the less you move them, the better. And again, just cut those again into 2-inch squares, so you can see, nice and easy, nothing to worry about. Just take your time. Go 4 2-inch squares in each print. Okay. Now we're ready. We're going to take our ruler and a pencil and we're going to mark up a diagonal line on the paler squares. It's always easiest to mark up on your paler squares. You're just going to literally draw from one on the back, a sharp pencil or a biro, whatever you prefer, one diagonal line to the other. And you need to do this on all of your pale squares. All of my diagonal lines are drawn now, so what I need to do is I need to match up my fabric's pretty sides together. Just match them up as best you can. There we go. Don't worry if they're not exactly perfect, because as I said, we're making everything bigger and we're going to trim it down. They're ready for the sewing machine. Take these to the sewing machine. And with a small stitch, you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from the central line on this side, and then 1/4 of an inch from the other side of the central diagonal line. Nice small stitches, and just do them a chain stitch. You can do them all running them through together. Won't take long. Take your scissors and you're going to want to snip those little threads that are keeping them together, your chain piecing together. Be careful not to snip in to your fabrics. I've done that a few times. And then on that drawn line, you're going to want to cut. You're just separating them out. You could do this with your rotary cutter if you prefer. Can admire your handiwork now. Open them out and give them a really good press. I prefer to press the seams open. It gives a really flat, professional finish, but it's up to you entirely. Back from the iron, all nice and pressed. Next step is to trim them down just to make them really square again. This will make it much easier for you to sew them together. We're going to be a 1 inch finish, so they're going to be quite fiddly. So the more accurate you can be now, the better. So I have got a special ruler designed for trimming them up. But if you haven't, don't worry about it. Just try and get the central diagonal line as true as you can. Trim them. You want them to be 1.5 inches trimmed to 1.5 inches across. So you're just going to take tiny little slithers off. There you go. If you've got a lot of these to do, it gets a bit boring, so I don't tend to do that many at a time because I find that I get a bit clumsy, get a bit rushed, get fed up. Just take your time, nice and methodical. There you go. So that is a really, really beautifully square half square triangle ready to sew together. Now we get to play. Take your trimmed squares and start laying them out. You could have, what could you have? You could have a green diamond and a blue diamond. Or you could have half and half. Where will I put that one? There. There. Half and half. Lay them out, have a play, see what you prefer. We're going to sew them like this though, so we're going to make 2 diamonds in a square, basically. That's what we want. Sew that together and that will be a rectangular pincushion as you've seen. All sewn together now, all pressed, all the seams are pressed open, nice flat finish. Next you need to make and cut the lining for your bag, just to keep all that pincushion stuffing in, and so that it doesn't keep falling out when you needles in and out and pins in and out all the time. Cut 8.5 by 2.5, and then the backing for your pincushion, which will be 4.5 by 2.5 inches. Put pretty sides together. So, and then what you're going to do is you're going to stitch very neatly all the way around, leave a decent size opening in the top, and then when you stitch the lining bag, you're going to need to do the same. So you're going to stitch across, around, all across, around and across, and then leave this bit open for the stuffing. The next step, once we've turned the lining bag the right way out and our pincushion the right way out, we're going to want to put the lining bag unfilled in the pincushion, really, because it's such a small space. It's going to be very hard to sort of fill this sufficiently and then put it inside. So you're just going to have to do some very gentle work so that you're protecting those pieced seams as best you can. If they come open, we can sew them together again, so don't worry about that. It's a little awkward, as you can see. It will all settle itself down. Of course, making it, there you go. Okay, the lining's quite nice and neatly inside my little pincushion now. It's much easier to fill your pincushion when the lining's inside, particularly when we're making such a small, dainty little thing. If you're using your toy stuffing, you should be able to put that in quite easily. But as I said earlier, I actually really like using sand for my pincushions. It keeps the needles nice and sharp. This is just ordinary children's play sand. I probably bought it when my boys were little, and they're 18 and nearly 16 now. You just buy it from supermarkets or DIY stores, wherever. It's very cheap. The thing is that when you buy the sand, it's actually wet, which of course you want if you're making a sandcastle, but we don't want it like that in our pincushions. So what you need to do is you need to take a small quantity of it out and then spread it on a tray or something, and then leave it out for a couple of days to dry, and then you've got it lovely and dry for your pincushions. This is quite a messy little job, so you want a tray or do it outside somewhere where you can keep the mess down to a minimum, or don't mind making a mess. And then you're just going to very casually, gently fill. Now, not only does the sand keep your needles and pins lovely and sharp and stops them going rusty, not that they really do go that rusty, do they? It also gives everything a really beautiful weight. It's very nice and satisfying to hold your pincushion if it's full of sand. As you can see, it just takes a little bit of jiggling around. Keep deciding whether you've got enough in there. Okay, that feels okay. And then what we're going to do, we're obviously not going to get this under the sewing machine now. The last thing we want is sand in the workings of our sewing machine. So we're going to do some hand sewing and just neaten up the lining first. You can see that might be a bit over full. I'll see how I go when I'm sewing it together. Lining first, and then you're going to do the pretty sides. Take a needle and thread. You want to do a double thread, knot in the end. Nice sort of short needle, because you haven't got much space. And now all we're going to do is close the gap in our lining, which is a little bit fiddly. We're just going to take little stitches, front and back. Again, they don't have to be beautiful to look at because they're inside, no one's going to see them. Little stitches just to secure that edge. Continue all the way along, keeping that main fabric out of the way. You're going to lose some filling. Try not to worry too much, or try not to lose too much of it either. Now you're going to feel all fingers and thumbs, but it's going to work out just fine. Continue all the way along. So that's all done now, and I'm just going to check that everything is in position. I'm just going to get that lining where I want it to go. I'm also going to check that there's not too much sand that's escaped that's going to be in the way forever. Does feel nice. So now the next step really is you're going to need another piece of thread, again thread it double with a knot on the end, and you're going to close this gap. So you're going to want to fold the seam allowances in. Just do this by eye, it's not a problem, and sort of score it with your thumbs and fingers so you can see where that seam is, and keep that lining fabric just loose for the time being, and it will settle down as you get further along. There you go. So you've worked out 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just score it as you go. You're going to take your needle, you're going to catch a bit from the inside here. You're going to want to tuck those ends in. Okay, here we go. So you're going to catch a bit of the lining, a bit of the front, pull through tiny little stitches, through threads of lining, through threads of front. Let's continue. Lining, front. So the smaller your stitches here, the better, but if you can see them, that's all right. Just make them nice and regular, and then they'll be nice to look at. Or you can hide them. And again, it's pincushion, so it doesn't matter. Do your best. You're going to take your needle and thread, again, thread double, knot in the end. You're going to fold these raw seam edges allowances in. So just score them with your finger and your thumb. Do the same for the lining as well, and then you're just going to hold them closed and then take a little bit of lining fabric, a little bit of main fabric, tiny little stitches. Take your time. Now you do tiny little stitches, you won't see them. If your stitches are visible, just make sure that they're nice and regular and worth looking at. Okay, and if they are wonky, big, just remember this is a pincushion, and it's going to work beautifully as a pincushion, even if it is wonky, even if your stitches are a bit big, won't matter. I'm just going to continue all the way along. Like so. All finished now. It's all nice and neat. It feels lovely, and it's a really dainty, pretty. I love a little thing, don't you? It's so satisfying. Really good practice with your half square triangles. All nice and neat, and it's ready for the best bit now. You can put your pins in. Now the very last step. The very last piece of advice I'm going to give you this time on this little tutorial is enjoy your finished project. Never ever ever point out your mistakes.